Imagine waking up one morning to find out that your entire 12,000-acre ranch land that's been in your family for generations was sold without your permission. Not by the bank, not by the government, but by a group of nosy HOA board members who thought they could push you around. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. My name's Luke Turner, and this is the story of how the local HOA tried to steal my ranch, and how I turned the tables so hard that I ended up owning their entire neighborhood. I've lived in the small town of Coyote Ridge for over 25 years. My family's ranch stretched for miles, 12,000 acres of cattle pastures, rivers, and old oak trees. My late father built that ranch from the ground up. So, when a new HOA was formed for a nearby luxury community, Silver Creek Estates, I didn't pay them much mind. They had their fancy houses, manicured lawns, and golf carts. I had my land and my peace. But soon, peace wasn't enough for them. You see, the HOA president, Diane Wheeler, was the type who thought her rules applied to everyone. She was the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, always dressed in designer suits, walking around with her little clipboard, writing down violations like she was running the FBI. At first, it was harmless. She'd complain that my cattle smelled too strong when the wind blew toward their neighborhood. Then she said my fence didn't fit the community aesthetic. Mind you, my ranch was there decades before their subdivision even existed. But the HOA didn't care about history. They cared about control. One morning, I got a letter in the mail from Silver Creek HOA. It said I was in violation of community maintenance standards and owed $25,000 in fines. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my coffee. I wasn't even part of their HOA. I called the number on the letter, and Diane herself answered. "Oh, Mr. Turner," she said with that fake sweet voice. "According to county mapping, part of your land overlaps with Silver Creek property lines. So technically, you're under our jurisdiction now." That was complete nonsense. But when I checked the county records, I realized something shocking. The HOA had filed a fraudulent plat map claiming that 4,000 acres of my ranch was within their residential expansion plan. They used that map to convince a local development agency that my ranch was abandoned land, and before I could even finish my morning chores, they'd sold it to a real estate investor for a community project. I couldn't believe it. They didn't just cross the line, they bulldozed it. I went straight to the county office, documents in hand. But the clerk shrugged. "Looks like it's already filed, sir. You'll need to take it up with a judge." So I did. I hired one of the best property attorneys in the state, Maria Lopez. She took one look at the paperwork and said, "This is fraud, but it's going to take time to prove it. Meanwhile, they can still act like they own your land." Sure enough, within weeks, surveyors showed up on my ranch, marking trees, measuring roads, even setting up future site signs for some gated community. I drove right up to them in my truck. "This is private property," I said. One of them looked up and replied, "Not according to the HOA, sir." That was the last straw. While my lawyer was working on the legal side, I started digging myself into the HOA's records. And what I found? Pure gold. Turns out, Diane and two other board members had been using HOA funds to make shady land deals under a fake development company, Silver Creek Investments, LLC. They were signing contracts, selling future plots, and pocketing the deposits. Worse yet, they'd even forged signatures from county officials to make it all look legitimate. I gave everything to Maria, and she smiled like a wolf who'd just smelled blood. "Luke, we're not just getting your land back," she said. "We're taking everything they own." We filed a massive civil and criminal lawsuit. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, misappropriation of funds. You name it. The evidence was undeniable. Within weeks, law enforcement raided the HOA office, seizing computers, files, and even Diane's precious clipboard. But the real twist? Under state law, because the fraudulent sales were made using HOA assets, the entire HOA's property holdings were now subject to civil forfeiture to pay damages. And guess who won the lawsuit? Yours truly. Months later, I stood on the courthouse steps holding the judgment papers. The HOA was ordered to pay me $14.6 million in damages, plus return every inch of my land. But since they didn't have the cash, the court approved the auction of all HOA-owned property, including their private clubhouse, office building, and maintenance lots. And who do you think bought it all? That's right, me. But I didn't stop there. Several of the board members had personally guaranteed some of the HOA loans. When they defaulted, their homes went up for sale too. With a few smart legal moves and a little help from investors, I ended up owning half the neighborhood that tried to steal from me. A few weeks later, I called a community meeting. Everyone from Silver Creek showed up, whispering and glaring. When I walked up to the podium, Diane wasn't there. She was already facing charges for fraud and forgery. I looked at the crowd and said, "I'm not here to take revenge. I'm here to remind you what happens when people let greed blind them." Then I announced that every honest homeowner could stay, free from HOA control. I officially dissolved the HOA right there. People cheered. Some cried. Others couldn't believe it. From that day on, Silver Creek Estates became just Silver Creek, a normal neighborhood, no more ridiculous fines, no more power-hungry presidents. And my ranch? Still standing. Stronger than ever. You see, power doesn't come from titles, money, or fake authority. It comes from doing what's right, and standing up when people think you'll just roll over. The HOA thought they could cheat an old rancher. But what they didn't realize was that I knew the law just as well as I knew the land. Now, when I ride across my ranch and look at the hills beyond Silver Creek, I can't help but smile. Because those homes, the ones that once tried to erase my history, they now stand as my property. And that, my friends, is what you call legal karma. So, what's the takeaway here? Never underestimate the power of truth, or a man protecting what's his. The HOA thought they could rewrite history, but they ended up writing their own downfall. They believed power came from paperwork, titles, and connections. But in the end, all the signatures, meetings, and fancy legal tricks couldn't stand against one simple thing: the truth. When you fight for what's right, you might not win overnight, but every lie eventually crumbles. That's what happened here. They built their empire on greed and manipulation, and it collapsed the moment real evidence saw the light of day. Luke's story isn't just about one man and his land. It's about standing firm when others try to take what you've earned. It's about showing that justice isn't always instant, but it is inevitable. For every person who's ever been bullied by power-hungry neighbors, unfair bosses, or greedy organizations, remember this: silence helps the oppressor, not the victim. Speak up. Stand tall. Because the law may move slow, but when it strikes, it hits hard. And let's not forget the sweetest part of it all: karma doesn't send warnings. It just shows up, calm and quiet, ready to balance the scales. So next time someone thinks they can cheat their way to the top, remind them of this story. Because sometimes, the person they're trying to step on is the one who's about to pull the ground out from under them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more powerful real-life stories that prove one thing: doing the right thing still matters. Because sometimes, karma doesn't knock. It buys your house, changes the locks, and leaves your name off the deed.